Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the Evolution of Movies podcast. My name is Jack Farmer, and I am joined, as always, by Andy Rossi and James Shippey. And we've got a lot to talk about. But before we get into all of that, how you fellas doing today?
I'm doing wonderful.
We're recording a little bit early. I think
4 a.m. 4 a.m. was crazy. I don't know.
Yeah.
The things we do for the people who watch this show, I tell you. I'm excited to talk about this one. I don't want to dilly-dally too much because I think this is going to be a big episode with a lot of stuff to talk about. But for people who are listening for the first time or watching for the first time, it is only our second episode. So most viewers and listeners, probably the first time. The way the show works and the reason we call it the Evolution of Movies is we start with a year. We start with 1990, and every week we do a new movie, but from the following year. So week 1, 1990, Lionheart. Week 2, we're here at 1991. Next week, it's going to be 92, 93, 94, and so on. And we're going to get to feel how movies change over the years. This year, like I said, 1991, lots of big movies came out this year. Silence of the Lambs, City Slickers, Addams Family, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Naked Gun 2, and Hot Shots. Before we get into the movie, Andy, how did you feel about 1991 as a year in movies?
Oh, it was great. My favorite movie in 1991 as a kid was definitely Terminator 2. And I felt like that early 90s, like sci-fi was really... They were really making some moves. Terminator 2 still holds up really well. Like the special effects and the action scenes are still really great. And I felt like early 90s, like James, you had to pick a movie from 91. That was tough. There was a lot of good ones. Like Jack mentioned, I think Silence of the Lambs was 91. I mean, that was a crazy movie.
Addams Family.
Addams Family. Was it Addams Family?
Oh,
or Addams Family 2?
Wikipedia says Addams Family, and in my experience, Wikipedia is never wrong. So I think it's in there. Yeah, I agree. Terminator 2, probably one of the all-time greats as far as action movies go. And you're right, it does hold up. Even the special effects, which is insane to me. That I mean, look, they're not as great as today, but you can't you can't sneeze at them. They're still pretty solid, especially when you look at how old they are. But James. Yeah. Tell us about the year in movies and wrap it all up by telling us which movie you chose for 1991.
Yeah, well, I mean, as Andy and you have said, there's a lot of great movies from 91. I mean, I'm looking here on the computer and I'm looking at classics like Point Break. I think that was probably like the Keanu Reeves, when he became an action guy, right? Because I think before that was like the Bill and Ted movies. Which are
that movie is so great.
Yeah. But then you have movies like, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, Sleeping with the Enemy with that's like a really good movie with a really bad guy. Okay, like the dude that's with Julia Roberts, her husband's like stalking her.
Is that where they have movie. Like the names of the towels? Is that
yes,
one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so weird.
And it still kind of made its way into the zeitgeist. Like if any couple is together in the house and something's out of place in the cupboard, like the cans are in the wrong way, people always kind of joke about putting everything in the right way. Nothing But Trouble was another movie. I'm getting Nothing But Trouble, a Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase movie that had Tupac Shakur in it. He was singing with Shock G. It was the first time we ever see him like rapping,
Yeah. Tupac had a few movies in that because he had Juice too.
Oh, you're right. Juice.
Poetic Justice.
Yeah. He was making the move into acting.
He was just as good of an actor as a rapper,
I think he was in some movie with not John Belushi, Jim Belushi. Am I right about that? Gang related. Yeah, there you go.
He shot that.
I don't know if that's the one he wants us to bring up first.
Yeah.
That's what Tupac is most known for, gang related with Jim Belushi.
Jim Belushi.
Definitely. But There's so many good movies to choose from, and my choice was a movie I grew up on, which was a Wes Craven movie. And Wes Craven, from the fame of Nightmare on Elm Street and all those horrors, and of course the Scream films. And this one was The People Under the Stairs. The People Under the Stairs. And I'm trying to think here. The plot, it follows a young boy and two adult robbers who become trapped in a house belonging to a strange couple after breaking in to steal their collection of rare coins. That's just straight to the point. People Under the Stairs, I believe it was like, it's got a pretty decent reception. It was 68% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The box office, the film opened it, and this lets you know this is back in the day, it opened at #1 in the box office, taking in $5.5 million.
Times have changed.
Yeah. But it went on to gross over, I guess, 24 million domestically and 7 million internationally. So bringing it to like 31 million. But I mean, the budget was probably around 5 or 6 million. So there was a profit they turned.
What I loved about this, going into this, because I had never seen the movie. I'd obviously heard about it, but I'd never seen it. And I looked up the synopsis myself. And again, not knowing the movie, the opening line of this synopsis I read cracked me up. It says, when a young fool breaks into the home of his family's greedy landlords. And I was like, you call the guy a fool already? What are you doing? What? Sure.
With a capital F, I assume.
Yeah, it had a capital F. I was like, this guy capitalized fool. I'm not believing this garbage write-up, but I thought that was a funny introduction, I guess, for the first look into this. A young fool. Getting into this, overall thoughts of this movie, I guess, as it being my first time, I was worried because I get squeamish during scary movies. And there's a few moments where this movie definitely made me squeam, but it was, I thought it was like a good mix of tense and scary, but also fun. And I'm sure we'll get into it in a little, like kind of probably near the end, but it was actually kind of a good highlighting of some social issues in some ways. Big time. It made me realize you never see horror movies in the ghetto, as they say in the movie. So I thought it was an interesting setting as well. But yeah, some social commentary in it that I thought was kind of cool. Andy, what did you think of the movie going into it and coming out of it?
Well, I did see it when I was a kid. I remember I remember it fairly well, at least like some of the characters. But yeah, it was great to go back and check it out. It was definitely kind of more demented than I remember, but also more funny than I remembered as well. I think when I was a kid, I was very, very scared of this movie. And watching it again, it was more like, it had more of like an Evil Dead kind of vibe to it, as opposed to probably, in my opinion, the scariest movie I saw as a kid was Candyman. So I was kind of thinking it was going to be closer to Candyman vibes, and I was thankful it wasn't, because I did watch it pretty late at night. But but I do think it was great. Like the movie that we did last week, make sure you check it out, 1990s Lionheart. I noticed the neighborhood in Lionheart and People Under the Stairs was like some kind of ghetto in Los Angeles that I've never seen before. And I thought, I wonder if these are the same neighborhood. It seemed very similar.
Andy, I'm going to get into that. I have a theory. I think something's going on that I definitely want to talk about. But yeah, I also like that you mentioned the Evil Dead thing, because the guy that played Daddy, so weird calling him that.
Or brother.
Or brother. He definitely had a Bruce Campbell Ash kind of vibe from Evil Dead throughout this whole movie, the way he sort of carried himself.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking he was like, no offense to the guy that played that character, but kind of a poor man's Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, but he wasn't the star. He wasn't the main guy. Fool was. He was played by Brandon Adams, who went on to do some movies like Mighty Ducks and The Sandlot. I thought, as far as his character, he quickly lives up to his name by routinely going into bad situations, but really does it in kind of the most lovable of ways. I like to poke fun at these movies when we do this, but it's hard to deny that he had a lot of heart and always wanted to do right. And it's kind of hard to sell him short as the guy, the kid that, you know, for lack of a better phrase, you can take him out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto out of him, because he just wrecks these cuckoos when it's time to throw hands at certain points. James, tell us about Fool the character before we get into the kind of nitty gritty of the actual show.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, yeah, it's almost a, I don't know, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? In the beginning of the movie, and of course we'll go through it, but, you know, we're told why he's being called a fool, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but he's full-heartedly going into situations. You know, he has the right intentions, but, you know, he's doing all of those kind of classic horror movie tropes, and you yelling at the screen like, "Don't do that! Why are you going there?" You know, okay, you're out of this situation, but he keeps going back in there. And I mean, you could call him fool / brave as well, because once again, all of this takes place basically on his 13th birthday. You know, so we're talking about him going into manhood and having to, you know, he's doing all the right things for the right reasons, right? So to speak, as the wrong thing for the right reasons. But they're foolhardily. But he's a great character, because the thing about him, too, and as I was mentioning the last time, at this point, you didn't really see in horror movies of this nature, like a young protagonist, one of color. This young, and then like I said he does a lot of tropes, but then again he avoids a lot of tropes. And in most of these movies, the true tropes are, oh, if you're the black guy, you're gonna die like in the first, you know, 5-10 minutes. That's kind of a well-known thing you're expecting, you know, which he actually does in Scream 2. I think he does that purposely, Wes Craven. When you have Jada Pinkett and Omar Epps, they die like in a movie theater. But with Fool,
spoiler alert.
Yeah, I know. If someone hasn't seen it, forgive me.
Right.
You know, it's been 25 years or so since that came out. But yeah, the thing about Fool is he's a great character because he's foiling the bad guys the whole time. It's almost a la Home Alone style, if you almost want to bring it to that. You know, even though this is a horror movie, there's a lot of comedy in it. And he's always kind of outsmarting these kind of, you know, racist, you know, talking about race, classes, and all this, and these landlords who are obviously like, you know how they are. They're like the typical bad guy landlords in these movies, to slumlords. Actually, that's what we would call them.
And you kind of hit on this, James. The thing I really enjoyed about this character is you're right. He did a lot of things that you'd find frustrating, but also he just did it in a lovable way. I find so many main characters in horror movies you almost hate because they're such idiots, but because of the way he handled things, you're rooting for him like a hero, even though it's a scary situation. Andy, again, before getting into all the nitty gritty details and walking through the movie, just thoughts on Fool as the character, our lead protagonist.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching Fool and just thinking this kid is so cool, because he would just walk into these buildings, or into the main building, into the main house, and just super cool. Like I was just like, this kid, nothing scares him. If I saw all these monsters living in a basement, I would be freaking out, just screaming, probably pee my pants, run the other way.
100% poop myself.
And he just like kind of takes it all in, and we'll get into it, but he's got some great one-liners as well. And he's just like, I don't know, I think he's seen some stuff, but James said it was his 13th birthday. Those first 12 years, he's seen a lot, because for him to go into this house and like be able to just stay cool the whole time, I was very impressed. And him, Brandon Adams, I mean, he was the pitcher on The Sandlot. He was in The Mighty Ducks. I think he was in an episode early on of The Fresh Prince. I think he dated Ashley, if I remember right. He was killing it. So I should have done some research on Brandon, but Brandon, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on. I don't know what he's up to lately, but what a crazy start to a career.
He's been busy. He's been working. If you check out his IMDb, he's got a lot of things noted on there. So he's been busy.
Good for him.
Let's start getting through this movie, though. Opening credits, James, you alluded to. We start with some tarot card reading, which just never ends well. It sort of tells us how Fool got his name, but you can make fun all you want, but they basically spoiled the movie. These tarot cards actually handed us some pretty heavy foreshadowing, telling us about Fool running from dogs, jumping off cliffs, fiery balls of inferno, burning away all that was once a boy and leaving only a man. I thought this was an interesting way to prologue and start us off. Andy, the tarot cards, I don't know if the tarot cards played a whole lot later on within the movie, but as a way to sort of tell us and sort of set the stage, how did you like this?
Oh, it was a crazy way to start. Like, I think it definitely like gets you in that mode right away. Once you see tarot cards, you're kind of like, oh, this is going to be a kind of a weird movie, you know? So you just kind of don't know what to think. So I think it's a great start to it, and gives you like, I can't think of any other movie that starts with tarot cards saying "fool" right in the screen. But I can't stop thinking about the next character we're going to see is in Ving Rhames.
Yeah.
But I'll defer to you guys for now for if we want to keep the tarot card talk going.
Yeah, just real quick thoughts, James, on setting things up with the tarot cards. Like I said, tarot card readings never end well. When Harry Met Sally does not start with tarot card reading.
It doesn't.
How did you like this setup as far as just sort of prologue to the show or to the movie?
Yeah, it's funny because, like I said, I hadn't seen this movie since I was a kid. So as soon as like that first frame comes up and that voiceover, like I said, it took me back. Because like I said, I remember my wife sitting next to me, she said, how many times have you seen this movie? And I couldn't give her the number, but I mean, I wore that tape out or the DVD or whatever. I mean, I saw this movie. I probably would watch this movie like every day during the summer. Like I was,
wow.
I saw myself in Fool, like, so it was like a huge deal to me. He's like a little hero to me. But you know, in the tarot cards, I was thinking about it's like the way it's starting is like, hey, this is like starting like almost like a fairy tale reading. You know, like that's kind of like the style it gave to me, even though it's going to be set like in the slums. And, you know, we're going to be like in this house. It's a very contained film. But yeah, like kind of like the fairy tale. As in, if you're reading a fairy tale book, you kind of get the whim of like what's going on. It's right in your face. And then, okay, we're going to see how this all unfolds. You know, a lot of foreshadowing.
Yeah. And so the next up, and we're setting the two scenes. We set the stage in two quick scenes, one at Fool's house with Ving Rhames dressed exactly like Ving Rhames. And this is where we find out Fool's real name is Poindexter, which explains why he so happily took the nickname Fool, if you ask me. We find out that they're low on rent and are about to get evicted, but Ving Rhames has a plan: rob the landlord across town. And we find the landlords are having a nice fireside meal, doing what landlords do, talking about evicting people and taking their money. I love the way they said money so evilly and vilely. They had to really put that over and sell it there. James, so we see now basically who are the heroes, who are the villains, both in two quick scenes. Now, at this point, I'll be honest, I didn't know what was going to happen because I saw tarot cards. So I was expecting supernatural, but these were just kind of the very opposite, two very real situations.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And as you said, they're facing eviction, and also his mom is sick. So like I said, they're setting up kind of these, you know, basically the inciting incidents, right? Which are just perfect. Obviously, he has to do this. And then we get introduced to Leroy, as you said. I mean, we can go deep into that, but I think this was Ving Rhames before, it was in Marcellus. This is before Pulp Fiction, right? Like maybe just right before. But I mean, he's playing all those kind of, you know, he's the brother that's giving you a plan, and he needs Fool to help them execute it. And the funny thing is, you mentioned the stuff about that couple. I didn't remember this. They were eating, I don't know what they were eating, some sort of gamey meat because he was getting rid of buckshot.
That's so disturbing.
Right. That definitely foreshadowed and set quite a bit of tone as well, that whatever he was eating was just killed, and he was not bothered by buckshot. I'll tell you, if I get something just a little tough, my poor mouth, I'm like, oh, I don't want to eat this. He's just chewing through buckshot. What a champion. Like Jaws from James Bond here. Now, there's a few Leroy spots to go around, but Andy, like I said, we set up both these things. What are your thoughts so far now that we sort of are starting to see the world being built here?
Yeah. Ving Rhames, for one, I think he's matching hat, matching shirt the majority of the movie as well, which I thought was a good move. And I noticed, did you notice that he had one hoop earring in his right ear? Mm-hmm. The reason I noticed this is that later when we meet his fella that wants to rob the house with him, I forget his name off the top of my head, the driver, he has one hoop earring in his left ear. And James mentioned that the budget of this movie wasn't much. So my initial thought was just thinking too much into this. I'm like, okay, so they bought a pair of earrings, but they got to spread it around. So Ving's like, I'll take one. And the other guy's like, well, I'll take the other one. So I don't know why.
Spencer. That's his name.
Yeah.
Spencer.
Yeah.
Spencer.
Speaking of wardrobe, Ving Rhames, I think, is the only one I've seen consistently pull off that hat type. And he does it a lot. Like in every movie he's in, I feel like he wears that same kind of hat, at least at some point. Am I wrong?
I don't think you are. I feel like I've seen him in other movies with that hat too. And it's kind of that kind of cross-colored African type vibe. It was really popular in the early 90s. You know what I mean? So,
well, I mean, even the black one he had in the first scene, because he had an all black one. It was the same style, but like, because I think he wears a black one in Pulp Fiction also. But I don't know. We get our first real look at the landlords when the Stepford wife gives her daughter, Laura Ingalls Wilder, a new dress. Then Mommy, as she's creepily referred to, realizes that her daughter gave silverware to a creature in the walls. And frankly, I was thinking, yeah, that's kind of weird. Silverware is expensive, and that hand is creepy. What are you doing? Herman Munster walks in and looks like he's perpetually smelling something rancid and decides it's time to lay down the law, creating some real tones here and also questions about just what is going on in the house. At least for me, again, haven't seen it. So I was like, so what's going on? Is this a monster that lives in the house? Is this a mutant? Is this a demon conjured up by tarot cards? I don't know. But we're definitely getting a little bit tense here. Andy, any thoughts about Alice being introduced at this point, and now the mom really showing her teeth a little bit?
Oh yeah, that initial scene when we meet Alice is so creepy, and I noticed in the background there's a sign, and that's when you kind of know things are gonna get pretty weird here. There's a sign and it says, "Children should be seen, not heard." That's what it says in her bedroom. So imagine you're a child and that's hanging in your bedroom. And then with the fork missing, I believe this is where mommy starts with, I wish I would have kept track of how many times she said this word, but that's when she says, "Bad girls burn in hell." Either she says it or daddy says it, but the mama says hell. She's very, very infatuated. Would that be the right word? With hell? Like hell is, she talks about hell a lot. I think she wants to go there.
Oh, if you have a drink every time she says burn in hell, you get wasted in this movie.
Oh, for sure.
Like the phrase, if the phrase burn in hell is your drinking signal, you're done. You're not finishing this movie. No chance in hell is what I would say. Now, James, what I like about you seeing this movie so many times is you see it with a little bit of a different eye. Anything we're missing? Andy, by the way, with the children are seen and not heard. Ironically, all the kids under the stairs are heard and not seen, it seems. But
that's interesting. Yeah.
But James, any thoughts or takeaways from this just kind of intro? Yeah. Again, tone setting moment.
Well, yeah. Well, like I said, you look at stuff through a very different lens as an adult versus a kid, right? But like as you look at it now, yeah, I think they very much set the tone that these are religious zealots, right?
Mhm.
And what is, because Wes Craven, I believe he wrote this film as well. Like, what kind of themes is he stating here about these people that are not only slumlords, that we're talking about socialist stuff, but like also religious, and I'm not gonna say spiritual, but yeah, actually maybe, because in tarot cards that could be kind of a, that might be more in the spiritual realm, right?
Mhm.
And how we may look at that. And then these religious zealots, how they're taking it too far, religious zealots slash 1%ism, which I think is very obvious throughout the film, like what they
Yeah.
are supposed to represent. But yeah, I mean, when this guy, I think he removes his belt in this scene. I feel like he does it more than once.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, but he removes his belt, and it's almost like it's some sort of foreplay
Yeah.
for mommy and daddy, okay,
Yeah.
to whip this girl into submission for feeding I guess her pet, quote unquote,
Right.
in the walls, so to speak. So I mean, they're already setting the premise for that.
Right. And if we had stopped the movie at this point and you had said that, I'd be like, I don't know about all that. But of course, watching the whole movie, yes, it is setting the stage for that. But let's go back outside. Let's follow up. Fool and the gang go to celebrate good times by robbing the house, joined by a guy driving a creepy van who looks exactly like someone who would drive a creepy van. After he gets in the house, mommy leaves and Ving suddenly gets real antsy about getting in and suddenly starts talking very inappropriately to Fool. But that makes sense because he has no subtlety. Like, he drives right up to the driveway, kicks down the door, starts breaking windows. And while he's doing this, he's saying, I'm going to teach you how to burgle, even though he doesn't seem very good at it. He's in this dusty old house filled with dead rats and bugs everywhere, trying to find gold coins. I think he needs to question his intel at this point, and I don't think he's ever robbed the house before because he doesn't seem good at it at all during this whole time. James, let's talk about this exchange and this entry into the house.
Good. And I want to say this because you mentioned Spencer. Let's not forget Spencer, because there's a whole thing. Spencer has the kind of look like you like, I've seen this guy before, but he's real skeevy, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
You've probably seen him in like a movie where he's like a porn director or something like that. But I think the funny thing is, first they send Fool. He comes in as a Boy Scout. And of course, when mommy sees him, he's casing the place, which is kind of cool. He's casing the house, checking out the cameras and all the locks, the padlocks. And mommy comes out and she's like, hey, you get away from the house, pretty much. Like, we don't want any, and he leaves. And then he comes back to Spencer and he says, oh, we can't get in there. It's like Fort Knox, yada, yada, yada. And Spencer's like, when you send a boy to do a man's job. And he comes in there. He comes in there, the white guy glory. He's like the I forgot what it is. He's I forgot what he's like a handyman or something. He works for the city. The gas man.
Yeah.
And he comes in, but obviously one thing he gives away, he's got like a skull on his finger.
Yeah.
And he forgot to take that off, I think, but then they let him in. He never comes out. So now Fool and Ving Rhames have to go in the house and they break in. And right away, it's a problem because they drive the van. I don't know if you guys caught this. They put their van in the couple's driveway.
Yes. I didn't get that at all.
Yeah. Like, wait, what? Like,
especially
why would you do that?
He was just across the street. It wasn't like he was parked a mile away and he couldn't find street parking.
Exactly.
Like, he had already been sitting out there. Why move the van in the first place? Just get out.
Exactly. Now, he also, and I wanted to say this, when they're breaking in, they have to go through a couple of different levels. They break a window to get into the main door. Then they have to break like a steel door with the crowbar, right? Or tire iron. And Ving Rhames said this line I remember seeing as a kid, and I just could not understand it. He says, that's the problem with, because Brandon's like, hey, do you think I'm going to be a doctor? Because basically Brandon wants to be a doctor. Fool wants to be a doctor. And he's like, maybe a burglar. And he's like, this is my 13th birthday. And then Ving Rhames says a line, yeah, too bad, 13, you're too old to get tit, too young to get ass. And I remember being a kid, like, what does that mean? What does that? I still don't know what that means.
I think it means he's too old. If you think about where kids get milk from, I think he's too old for that. Right. There we go.
Interesting. Thank you, Jack.
I thought, James, you were gonna talk about Ving Rhames' Leroy. Is it Leroy?
Leroy.
Yeah, Leroy.
Leroy's line. I wrote it down here. It's so good. I forget the context of it, but he tells Fool, he says, well, maybe the president gonna make me secretary of pussy.
I was thinking, like,
I had to back that up and be like, wait, what just happened?
He talks so dirty to this kid whose mom he's banging. Like, just can you imagine? I don't know. Did they ever explain what the actual relationship is with Ving and Fool? Like, is it his mom's boyfriend? That's kind of what I was getting.
Great question. And it's always confusing. So the mom is sick in bed, but you think it was that the grandmother. That other girl, I believe, is his sister. The other girl, so he's dating the sister, I guess. They don't make it very clear.
Yeah, that's kind of what it seems like.
Yeah, but you never see any intimacy between them or anything. And, so you're not really sure.
Well, talking like that, I'm not surprised.
now this movie is written by Wes Craven, but that had to be
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Or Van Damme.
That had to be a Ving Rhames line, though, right? Secretary of Pussy. Like, I don't imagine Wes Craven writing that. I don't know.
I want to imagine Wes Craven like directing, like, so now Ving, this is what I want you to say.
Yeah.
And say it with some heart. Say it.
And what does the Secretary of Pussy do?
Well,
I guess we'll have to have Ving on.
We'll have to have Ving on.
Have to ask Ving that question.
What's the day-to-day operations of the
right?
He totally stole this opening part of the movie, I thought, with all his lines and just being such a jerk the whole time. In fact, eventually we get to the part in all good scary house scenarios where the two of them split up and Ving finds himself upstairs while Fool verifies his name yet again by going into a scary stranger's dark basement. This is where the scary really starts in the show. And this is where things start moving really fast in this show. Like, a lot happens in this movie. And as I was saying before we came on air, it doesn't really even feel like there's act 1, act 2, act 3. It's just kind of, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And they just rapid fire scenarios at us. But now we're in the basement. Any thoughts at this point so far, fellas?
I think like what you said, Jack, is like, yeah, this is what it starts getting pretty creepy. Like, they do some great like camera work here, like where you're like right behind Fool in like kind of like the living room area. That it's very creepy. Like, it gives you like a little heebie-jeebies. It's like, the camera's right behind him, and you're like, what's gonna happen? So I think you definitely get that like kind of like vibe of like, okay, this is gonna start getting creepy here. And I think, like you were saying with Fool, he goes downstairs, he sees some scary stuff, and then he goes to leave, like he goes back upstairs, and then he tells himself, I think he calls himself a chicken shit. And I'm like, no, go, you should go.
Yes.
But I'm like, he's just so chill, and he's just such a like a tough kid. Like, I would have been out of there in a second, but yeah, he calls himself a chicken shit and then goes back down. And then if I have this correct, it's really creepy, but he's kind of not too freaked out yet. And then that guy who we later learn is forget his name off the top of my head now. But
Roach.
that guy jumps on him. Roach, right?
Yeah.
He jumps on him, and then I'm like, all right, now you got to be freaked out now. But Fool still is cool, but I think that guy jumping on him definitely throws him for a loop a little bit.
What I liked the most before Roach jumped on him, I liked how Fool found Spencer and literally pried the gold from his cold, dead hands. That's when I realized that maybe Fool will be a good burglar after all.
True.
And you're right. That's where we got our first look at the stair people, as I call them. And yeah, they almost got Fool, but Alice shows up and saves Fool and then disappears without a trace, probably because she heard Mama coming back home. And then Fool goes upstairs to tell Ving, who's lying face down on the floor, making Fool think he's dead, before telling Ving that Spencer in fact, is dead. This kicks off the escape part from the haunted mansion portion of the movie. But I loved, and James, I'll let you take it from here. I loved how Ving says, just because a man ain't dead just because he's laying face down on the floor.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Which was another line that really stuck out to me as a kid, because it's like, wow, because it seems like this is a teachable moment he's telling him. A man ain't dead because he's laying face down on the floor.
That was,
you know,
that was the one thing he taught him in this movie.
It was like his fatherly advice to Fool. You know?
Right.
But Fool's line to Ving Rhames there, though. James, I'll let you say it. I'm guessing you have that written down.
Oh, I definitely do. Because I wrote that down before he even said the line. And then I showed my wife, you know, because he says, "You sure he's dead?" He's like, I forgot. He's like, he definitely looks at it. "You thought Spencer was white before? Or you thought that sucker was white before? You should see him now." You know, which is true. He's like 10 shades whiter than he was. His hair was gray. He looked like he had seen a ghost or something.
I just love, "You should see that sucker now." It's I think when we talked last week, Joshua was saying sucker a lot, right?
Yeah, he was. So now that lets me know, I do believe now, yes, Van Damme did write those lines. Right. And Wes Craven did too. It's the time period.
Early 90s was a good year for Sucker.
Yeah.
A good time.
Yeah, good time for Sucker. But I wrote that down, and I remember my wife saying to me, "Oh, well, you must have subconsciously remembered that line, you know, from your kid," because I literally wrote, "Oh, you should see Spencer now. You thought he was white before." I wrote that like 5 minutes before he said the line.
It's great.
You know, so I think for this next part of the film, as you said, the escape, that was kind of one of the best tension-filled moments of the film, because there was no way for them to get out. And at that point, Ving at that point is kind of the big brother. I know how to take care of everything, you know, all that stuff. But at this point, he didn't have any idea how to get them out of the situation. So each time he kept trying to find a way to break out of the house, it's almost as if like he was coming down to the same level as Fool, instead of like Fool just looking up to him, and like Fool's gonna have to be the one to help make decisions here, because he didn't know how to get out. And we saw with the big moment, obviously, I don't know if we get ahead of it, but when the dog comes and attacks them, and the idea Fool gets from the I guess an electric door that gives them electric shock, trying to leave the front door.
One of the greatest movie scenes in the whole movie, when Ving's getting bit and Fool takes him over to the electric door, and like Blanca from Street Fighter just sends shockwaves through himself, through Ving, and to the dog to shock the dog off of him. But this is also where I think it should be noted, where we really see how selfish Ving is, because throughout this, he's like, "Hey, Fool, why don't you put your head in here and look?" And then when they're hiding, he's like, "I'm going to go get in this room. You stay out of it." Actually, I think that actually happened after the dog, now that I think about it. But I love that scene where he shocks himself to shock Ving to shock the dog. Because that was the first kind of like humorous part during the scary scene. And I didn't know if that was supposed to be or not, but I got a good chuckle out of it.
Oh, it's extremely funny. That's like I said, that's very Home Alone-ish. I think Wes Craven was kind of channeling that whole kind of vibe in this movie. Like marry that kind of comedy to a horror premise and a social political kind of movie. You know? Yeah.
And so, of course, they're running around and they're hiding and doing everything they can to get away. But like I said, Ving says at one point, "I'm going to hide in this room. You got to find your own room," which is just the most jerky thing in the world. But I still loved it. Then it worked against him, though, because Herman Munster found him and shot him to death. And at this point, Andy, I'm asking myself, I don't know if I'm more scared of the stair people or the landlord.
Yeah. Is this at the time now? Is he in his S&M GIMP suit at this time?
Oh, that's in a little bit. But
that's coming.
Yeah.
10 minutes hence, or therefore. I don't know how to write.
Because at this point, I was wondering, were the stair people like rats? Like, were they trying to get rid of the stair people? This is what I'm asking at the time, because they're running through the walls and he's shooting at them, and he clearly doesn't like them. because again, at this point, I don't know. It's just Roach. I don't really know what the situation is. And so I was very wondering, like, what are the role of the stair people like versus the landlords. But I found I was more scared of the landlords for sure. And I was also thinking at this point, as Alice is talking to Fool, I'm surprised Fool trusted her so quickly.
Yeah.
But Andy, to your point, or to your point, how do you feel about, again, where we're at with this and the landlords and stuff?
Well, for one, I was really sad that Ving Rhames is dead. Like, I thought for sure, I'm like, he's going to come back. It's going to be like, he'll have his moment, but that's it. They just shoot him. And now I was kind of sad. I'm like, because he was great. And to lose him was pretty sad.
Andy, just because someone's been shot 5 times doesn't mean they're dead, okay?
I didn't think so.
Doesn't mean that a man is dead. Shot 5 times and flown down a flight of stairs.
I thought for sure he was coming back, but spoiler alert, he does not.
So Alice, this is where Alice really finally tells us who the people under the stairs are. Mom and Dad wanted a perfect young boy. And even though my parents got it right on their first try, these two weren't so lucky.
And she says, Daddy, I wrote this down too. She says, Daddy cuts off the bad parts. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean?
That's creepy. Yes, so they see bad things, they hear bad things, they speak bad things. Daddy cuts off the bad stuff and keeps them in the basement instead of throwing them out onto the streets to be homeless. Because, hey, Mom and Dad aren't monsters after all. James, now we know what the people under the stairs are, and we're actually feeling maybe a little sympathetic for them because we know they're not there by choice. We now know they're captive. They've been tortured. They don't want to be there, but my big question, shouldn't this be called The Boys Under the Stairs?
Boys. See, we don't know that. Are you going to the fact like we don't see any women or like any females?
Well, because Alice says specifically they're trying to find the perfect boy. So I'm thinking that means they're all boys, right?
Yes, but like I said, if it's Boys Under the Stairs, that has a completely different conversation. It's a different movie. It might fit, especially when Daddy puts on the Gimp outfit, which that's a whole other thing. Okay.
Yes.
And you know what? This is the funny thing. I was reading different stuff, and I don't know what the clarification is right. Maybe we see with Alice later on. I don't know if these are necessarily their children. These are people just people they've held captive. And I don't know if that's maybe clarified to even more later. Young people, because with Alice, we're going to come to find out later on, there's more to it than those just being her typical mother and father, right?
Yeah, so, I do have some questions about that I want to bring up in a little bit because when they get explained a little bit more in detail.
Exactly, but in this scene when he's in a room with her, I remember he says, "What? You've never seen a brother before?"
Yeah,
right. And then she goes, "I've never had a brother."
Yeah. Then doesn't he say like neighborhood? And she's like, neighborhood.
Yeah, like she doesn't know what a neighborhood is.
Yeah,
just lets you know she has not left that house, and she's kind of doing the creepy thing. She's like, well, why haven't they, put you in a cellar? She's like, I neither speak, hear, or see no evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was actually really I was actually impressed with her because she was saying they're looking for perfect kids and the ones who aren't perfect go down in the basement. So Alice was kind of humble bragging that she is the perfect daughter.
Yeah.
Right? I'm living a good life up here. Captivated in my room.
I don't see evil. I don't hear evil. I'm perfect.
Well, I mean, she has the sign in her room every day that children should not be seen, not heard. It's just like she knows every day, wakes up like, got it.
Got it. Yep. Survive.
And so we quickly find out that Roach is the fella that's crawling around in the crawl space here. But fellas, and Andy, you alluded to this. This is when we are introduced to one of the greatest characters in cinematic history. Super Gimp comes out. And before we even break this down, we've already been dancing around this so much. Ving Rhames is in this movie as a criminal. A Gimp is in this movie as a Gimp.
Yep.
Oh my God, are we still connecting Lionheart and Amsterdam with Vincent Vega? And now we have maybe Marcellus Wallace after his time as Marcellus Wallace meeting the Gimp once again to get revenge. Oh my gosh, is this an interconnected universe? Are they all together? I'm reading the tea leaves, Andy. You are, Andy, and I'm glad I'm going to take it to you because you mentioned the Gimp, and you're also our expert on all things Quentin Tarantino and Gimps. So I want you to tell us.
Don't forget that second part.
Gimp expert.
Tell us all about this interconnected Marvel type universe that no one else has seen until us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for sure, you got Ving Rhames, you got the Gimp suit. So right away you think Pulp Fiction, which Ving Rhames was in, of course. And Pulp Fiction was directed by Tarantino, who, of course, directed Reservoir Dogs, which has Chris Penn in Reservoir Dogs. And Chris Penn is, of course, Kevin Bacon's best friend in Footloose. So we got our, I think that's like 5 degrees to Kevin Bacon there. But yeah, I definitely when I saw the Gimp suit, I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, was Tarantino watching this and was like, okay, got the Gimp suit. We got to do that for Pulp Fiction. Ving Rhames, that guy looks great. We got to put him in this. You know, I'm just sad that Fool didn't get a role.
Yeah. I love the idea of this guy knowing that there's this kid in the house and knowing that there is Roach in the house. And he's trying to murder these people. And he's like, man, I'm not dressed for this. Let me go get my clothes.
Yeah, that was my big. I'm like, that seems like. I mean, Jack and James, you guys have worn a Gimp suit a little bit more than I have, but it seems like something that takes a while to put on. Like it's just like it seems very unnecessary. Is it for protection, or is it for? Is this like a sexual thing? Like I had so many questions. I couldn't stop thinking about it, to be honest with you.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that. It's almost a weird because it's almost when you see stuff like this, you could easily be like, oh, well, okay, the director just wanted to put this in there. Like this is, he obviously just wanted to put a Gimp suit in. He had a thing like, okay, yeah, get the Gimp and, get the midget, while you're at it, or the little person, just to throw all that crazy shit in there.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Once again, I think he's going to something here. Not with the religious stuff, because I mean maybe it could be juxtaposed against that, right? Like the zealotry. But once again, Mommy and Daddy. I mean, just think about it. That's their names, Mommy and Daddy. They I think this is some kind of foreplay and kind of some kink stuff for them. Because like I said, a Gimp suit, what is that? S&M. That's like S&M type stuff. Mm-hmm. And his big reason for wanting to get the Boy Scout and also get Roach at the same time, but mainly the Boy Scout, because he's worried the Boy Scout is alone in this house with my little Alice. Yes. And everything keeps going back to, will this boy debase my little girl? Which some people could be like, oh, okay, that's a good character thing, like a good reason for him. But in my mind, I'm not sure if he's worried about him debasing her because he only wants to be the one to debase her.
Yes.
As opposed to, not just protecting her from a stranger, but, oh, I need to keep her pure for me.
Yes.
So,
which again, at this, if we had stopped right here, I would definitely see the undertones, because I mean he's wearing a Gimp suit. It's not even an undertone at that point. It's just a blaring tone. But the connection between him and Alice, of course, we see continue to percolate. In any case, lucky Fool, the police show up and offer absolutely no help at all, except for Mom and Dad finding out that Fool's in the house. And so this is where Fool really steps up, in my opinion, because when the guy who can't decide if this is a movie or a dress code, or has a dress code of Gimp or business casual, he sticks his head through the door of the bathroom, and Fool blasts him with a toilet before saying, "Come in here and I'm going to kick your ass." It was one of my favorite things. Kind of weird way for me to get there, but basically I just love the fact that Fool wasn't messing around. Like so many characters in these situations, they get scared and they're running, and maybe if they get any type of offense in, it's just like kicking at them as they're trying to run away. But no, he picked up that toilet, whacks him on the head, and it's like, come in here and I'm gonna kick your ass. I love that he had the guts to just take it to him. I would like to see him follow up a little bit more, but hey, whatever. I'm not a 13-year-old kid being chased by a gimp. James,
Yet.
This is where yet. There's still time.
There's still time.
That bucket list can still get crossed
exactly.
off.
Little role playing.
Yeah, James, this is where we really see that Fool is not one to be messed with. Is this where he really becomes more than just the victim and kind of someone who can stand up for himself?
Oh, big time. I mean, because at this point, he has no one to rely on. Like I said, the 2 adults that he came with are gone. They're dead. And it's just about him and his wits and how do I get out of this house? You know, it's a matter of survival. And once again, I mean, him growing up in the slums, you know, any kid will tell you, you know, if you grew up, depending on what kind of neighborhood or culture environment you grew up in, it's all about survival anyway. Let's forget a movie. Like in real life, it's about survival, even just getting from your door to school and all the obstacles you have to deal with. But yeah, I think this is when he took it in. And then at the same time, this is when him and Roach, up to that point, Roach is a scary person, but Roach actually comes to kind of save him. Right when he's in that bathroom, because at that point, after Daddy got hit over the head with the toilet cover, right?
Yeah,
the nice porcelain toilet cover, he still has a gun on him, and he's going to shoot Fool. But obviously, Roach gets him, and this is when Fool kind of learns the house at that point, because he's going through all the walls with Roach, and I think they send the dog after them, don't they?
Yeah.
At this point, so. You know, it's a little bit of comedy there, as the dog is the other antagonist throughout the movie. But yeah, I mean, at this point, Fool is like taking matters in his own hand, but also getting assisted by the other good guys. So what initially would have been scary to him is really an ally. The scariest people are these parents, no question.
Yeah, and something I like that you mentioned, James, is that it gets a little lighthearted here, especially with the dog going down the slide with the little toy in his mouth. And Andy, I want to take this to you. This is where, again, this movie's been tense. It's been scary, but this is a moment where they sort of break the tension and have some comedy. And it almost felt like a more frightening version of the Goonies at this time. And just as a film creator, not to dive in too deep maybe, but what are your thoughts on taking these tense moments and breaking them with comedy to sort of give us viewers maybe a second to relax?
Yeah, I think you definitely need it, because you can't just have tension the whole time where you're gonna have a panic attack watching. And yeah, when the dog, so for one, every time the dog comes, the sound effects they have for that dog looks, you guys know I'm a big dog lover, and he's like the cutest dog, and every time those sound effects are just, they just got like a wolf and a bear and everything together, and it's just this crazy bark. And but yeah, I love Fool's line here. So the dog is biting Fool, and then Fool says, "What are they feeding you?" And like right on cue, the dog coughs up the skull ring that Spencer was wearing earlier in the movie. I thought that was brilliant. That was great.
Yeah.
It just made me laugh. It's so stupid. Yeah. But they showed that skull ring earlier in the film, and I kind of was like, I wonder how they're going to pay that off. And then later you see the skull ring when he's, super white. And then you see the skull ring again when the dog spits it up. So I thought that was pretty good. Good toss back. But then another thing I wanted to mention was Roach. I realized remember that milk commercial where it's like Aaron Burr?
Yeah,
that's the milk guy. So I was happy to see. Hey, milk guy.
Yeah, he actually had quite a career too.
And he didn't, if I remember correctly, in the milk commercial, he can't talk because he's eating cookies or something.
Oh,
in this movie, he's not talking as well.
Because he also had too much peanut butter. No. One of the things I wanted to say real quick, my favorite part, I think, about Super Gimp and his alter ego daddy is that he growls every time he enters the room in the same way Kramer kind of bursts into every room. I almost expect applause at some point because every time he comes in, he's like, he's like shows up.
He does. And every time, like, he could have killed Fool so many times. Like, he's got the gun and he's just like holding it. He's like, "Arr, arr." And, like, the Gar, like, if he didn't do the Gar, Fool would probably get killed. But Fool hears the Gar, and he's like, I'm out of here. You know.
A fun moment is while our heroes are regrouping, Alice says, "Roach is my friend," and you can see a moment in his eyes where Roach realizes he got friend zoned.
Oh.
But maybe it's better because that's also we find out that Alice keeps dolls that hold the souls of the burglars. What? I'm supposed to cheer for this person? James, defend the hero in here. How are we supposed to like this person?
That was so shocking. I totally forgot. I mean, like I said, you're a kid, you're not getting it. But as you said, she pulls out like a keepsake box of all of these like dolls, I guess, of, like I said, the souls of burglars. Apparently, this house has been attempted burglarized. Burgled at least 20 to 30 times. I'm like, wow. I mean, this is insane. And it makes you wonder, were all those people down there burglars? Or I guess all the burglars turn into food, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm kind of foreshadowing something that comes later. But yes, it's odd. But I didn't take anything. I thought she meant well. She
meant well, keeping the souls of burglars.
Yeah.
Hey, she didn't know what a neighborhood was.
She's
trying her best.
I'm sure Shang Tsung meant well too when he ate the souls of the Mortal Kombat fighters. But
of course, he meant well. He was doing it for his own right reasons.
Yeah, you know, it's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be honest. For me, this is where the squeaming really started. As the guy that looks like Frankenstein's monster is now eating Ving, which, by the way, just because you're being eaten does not mean you're dead. He starts
just because a man is being cannibalized doesn't mean he's dead.
Doesn't mean he's dead. And he's, Frankenstein's monster is now sharing Ving with the Stair Boys. And Alice, this was probably the most squeamish moment of the entire movie for me. No joke. I literally screamed when she got thrown into the hot water bathtub.
Spring cleaning during that.
Yeah. Oh, it was so it looked so painful. But then Big Daddy Cool throws Fool into the in with the Stair Boys, and that looked like a scene out of Scared Straight. It looks like things aren't going well for the heroes here. Andy, why isn't Roach helping out the rest of the Stair Boys if it's so easy for him to get around?
That is true. Yeah. Well, for one, the spring cleaning scene, it's almost like a montage of just like, like our heroes, this is their time where, this is where shit's hitting the fan. And now hopefully, they're going to have bad things happen and then they're going to rise and, have their climactic moment. So did you notice how much blood Alice was cleaning at the bottom of the stairs? I think that was where Ving died. I'm like, exactly. How much blood does this sucker have? Like there was like so much blood. And they gave her like a little tiny sponge. And I'm like, that's going to take hours. Yeah. She's not going to be able to get all that.
I was thinking, you're not getting that out of you're going to have to sand that floor down or something. You're not getting that out. Like that's hardwood floor. It's soaked in.
Yeah. And Mommy threw her into that blood.
Yeah.
And then blames her for getting her dress dirty. Like, I screamed too, because that looked like that wasn't like a stunt double or anything. I mean, she really just slipped and fell into it. It was very abusive.
Right.
Yeah, I noticed that. And that's when, for me, like actor wise, Mommy, man, I mean, what? I don't think I could ever see her in anything and just not be kind of terrified. Like she just went all in on that. I mean, Daddy too. They just both really were like, let's get weird.
Now they're getting weird. And Now is when they decide.
Yeah, this is when I'm like, wow, they're weird. Before I was like, let's just see.
Well, I was reading, and I got to credit a Rolling Stones article, but basically they say Craven cast Robbie and McGill, that's their real names, in part because he liked them. They were in the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks, which I didn't watch that show. Oh. But their characters in that, they were pretty much batshit crazy in those movies, in that TV show too. And he's like, oh, these guys will be perfect for this.
Yeah, this is where things are starting to look really bad. But eventually, Fool gets away, and the boys are back in the house. And possibly the greatest moment in this entire movie occurs as Big Daddy Cool's choking out Alice, and Fool runs out and just punches this dude square in the balls.
Testicles.
Testicles.
Another ball kick or ball punch again.
I know. He thought of Van Damme, right?
There were like some similarities with the Lionheart in this, which is so crazy.
I cackled when this happened and I saw it because he just runs up and just square bam. Like that's what he was going for. He didn't accidentally connect. Yep. He ran up and just plastered this dude right in the testicles.
That's the great equalizer, Jack. If you're fighting against someone bigger than you, you go for the testicles. That's how you can chop someone down to size.
I mean, that dude just got punched in the grapefruit so hard and went down.
Should have had his gimp suit on.
But this leads to a thing, and I want to give some respect here. Prince the dog. Oh. We need to put some respect on his name. He is the MVP of the Killer Crew. He's the one that's chasing down everybody, biting everybody, clawing everybody. He's the one doing all the real work here. In fact,
what?
There you go.
He's here.
Perfect timing.
So here's our next guest.
Here's our next guest. But also, I could not have planned that better. This is also where we realize, again, Fool's kind of a badass doing this spin move to get the dog stabbed instead of himself. At the end of the day, though, I say both of these dudes are tough hombres. This felt like the boss fight to me because it was the dog doing the dirty work that's been putting in the time, going up against Fool, who's just been leveling dudes with hooks to the junk. But Fool comes out the winner. And James, before I let you comment, I just got to say, one of my favorite lines of the movie was "Gotcha!"
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Daddy was nuts. I mean, I always gonna kill you, like he's just always yelling stuff. Like I said, these guys are batshit crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a moment I think after that, and I want to say it's probably the most racist and true line that he says. When she says, you couldn't get him, like Mommy said that, and he says, he's fast, damn it. Open the kitchen, Right? I was like, that is true. And it's a little, just a little brother running around now.
Yeah.
I don't know. When Daddy grabbed, I have a note here. When Daddy grabbed his crotch and testicles, all of our fears were realized. Oh wow! I don't know where that came out.
No, I know what you're talking about. I know the moment. I know the moment you're talking about. It's later on.
Yeah. Now, and I don't know if we've gotten to that yet, and so I don't want to get too far, but I don't know if we're going to get to basically the neighborhood shows up at this point.
Oh, that's in a little bit.
That's a little bit, right?
But this is the part where the dad celebrates like he just scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Of course,
because basically Fool fakes that he got killed. He's like,
and then she says, "Let me see him."
No.
Prove it.
He didn't fake it. This wasn't when he was faking. He just saw the blood from the dog through the wall, and he confused it. Because poor Prince, rest in peace, he took the knife instead of Fool. Which, by the way, I have to say, I may not get a lot of love for this. I may get hate mail. I might get people adding me. But at this point, I'm realizing that as it pertains to the relationship between Mommy and Daddy and Fool, The good guys are actually mommy and daddy. This kid broke into their house to steal their stuff and kidnap their kid. Of course they're defending themselves. Guys, do I have a point here? Like, this kid broke into their house. He's a burglar.
I mean, for the actors, I'm sure when they were breaking down their lines and doing their intentions, yes, that's how you got to do it, right? So they can give themselves 3 dimensions.
I mean, I'm just thinking now. Put the fact that there's an army of mutilated children under their house aside.
Put that aside. Put that aside, and all the child abuse going on.
Right. I mean,
and sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a little child abuse. He was coming back to rescue this girl. I mean, so brave. Him coming back. He got away, and then we kind of skipped over when he's talking to like the avuncular older black guy.
No. Real quick, I do want to say, because I guess because we do, again, so much stuff happens. There was the moment where Fool found himself on the ledge of the house. And this is where the tarot card foreshadowing really felt like it hit its stride, because it was jump off the cliff or back into the fire. And Fool took the cliff, landed in the pool, yelled back, "I'm going to come back for you." But of course, he first had to go home, get his coins appraised, figure out his college plans, and all that stuff.
I love that actor too. That is it his grandfather? Is that who the
I don't know.
I thought he said. I couldn't tell if he was just the local coin appraiser or if he was a grandfather. But
I think the actor's name is Bill Cobbs. But he's in the. I remember him from the movie Demolition Man back in the day. He was like the guy that was like Stallone's partner, like now older. Yeah. But I'm like, why hasn't this guy been in the like? I don't know. I thought he was wonderful, and I'm like, they should have had him in more. I don't know.
Yeah,
he was great for those 5 minutes.
That actor is one of those. I call him that guy in That Thing, where like
totally
he's in a million movies, but like if I said name him, you go, wait, what was he in? But I know he's in 1,000 movies, and I love him in all of them, and he's always great. But like, certain people like Danny Trejo was like the face. The face of that brand for a while, but then he became famous enough. Now we know Danny Trejo, but anyways,
he says you have enough coins to pay the rent till the year 2000. Yeah,
I thought that made me feel old. By the way.
But at the time, that had to be like, wow.
Oh wow,
2000
years.
But actually, even then, he could have said you can pay the rent for 8 years. Like, okay.
Great.
I mean, that's still cool, but it's not like, it doesn't sound as impressive, I guess.
And good math. That's good math for him to be like, okay, so the rent's this much per month. You have this much gold, about this much. Like he was able to, it was fast math.
Yeah. I don't know the value of gold or the cost of rent there, but it also didn't look like it was actually worth that much. Like it was that much.
Yeah.
Like it looked like a good amount, but it didn't look like it was like, oh, all your financial troubles are over forever. It looked like, it's a nice chunk of change, but like, paying for college? Come on, man. Like, have you seen the cost of college?
Pay for community college.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
This was one of my favorite parts, though, because he just jumps in like, oh, yeah, those landlords, they're crazy. I wouldn't even walk by that house.
Yeah.
Which tells me Ving, I was right, should have checked his intel because everyone else knew that this place was crazy. And there was no reason they should have jumped in there. Exactly. It seemed like the only 3 people that didn't know this were the ones that went into the house.
Grandpa Booker, that's his name. Yes, just avuncular Grandpa Booker.
How did they miss the fact that no one else knew that this house was crazy outside from the fact that it looks crazy? But also, and James, I want you to answer this because I know you understand the characters. How come no one cared about Ving being dead? No one even talked about it. No one even mentioned that this guy's been murdered. They're just like, oh yeah, it's a creepy house. Anyways, rent's paid.
That's true.
Right. Well, he wasn't he was we were just dating. He wasn't my main guy.
That's so cold.
Together. I mean,
he crawls up through the windows. Just because someone's been gutted open and left in a well doesn't mean they're dead.
Oh my goodness. I mean, yeah.
But Fool is a true hero because he goes back even after hearing about all of this madness. He still goes back for Alice. Like,
well, I wanted to say too, speaking of how long it takes him to do that, though, he calls the police. It looks like it's the next day, and time must have passed because Alice had alluded to later on that the pool had been drained, filled with rocks and broken glass. That doesn't happen in like 5 minutes. That's that takes time. Was it like a month before he came back?
It's a great question. We don't know how long it's been, but it's been long enough. I kind of pictured maybe it's been a week or two.
The blood is still on the floor probably from that
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but the cops come. Actually.
Yeah, the cops come and do a bang-up job.
Yeah, the numbnuts cops come by. And they're loving the cookies.
Yeah.
Obviously. The cookies and the tea they're being served.
Yeah. Half the precinct showed up, and not only did they not find the kids under the stairs, but another kid snuck in and they didn't notice. And so this is where, as we're really getting into the final beats of this this movie, Fool, the police clear out. Fool grabs his fire poker, but he gets distracted by a weird recording of the mommy and daddy
genius
playing a quick prayer. And I love the idea of this because I love the idea of them saying, quick, let's record this prayer so we can distract the kid long enough for me to get in my GIMP outfit. Let's make it a long prayer because there's a whole lot of zippers on this bad boy.
and the timing of it was amazing. Like, Fool's walking like slowly down the hallway, and it just so happens right when he looks, that's when he sees the tape is ending.
It's
like, it was just like,
yeah, you're right.
They knew.
It also gave away little because as he's walking up the street, you hear them talking about Fool. Oh, if that boy ever comes back, we're gonna get him or something, right? They're alluding to how, I'm sorry, we're gonna go out and find him. He actually makes a statement. I'm gonna go to the hood and find that kid. He says it. I was like watching that. I listened, and I'm like, okay, really? You're gonna go to the slums and look for him? So we should have known then.
I love how people, like, no one talks like that in real life. I never say, like, hey, Andy, you want to go to the hood with me and go pick someone up? But again, this is where Fool proves that he's not one to be trifled with because he just gouges this dude's eyes out, takes mom's knees out, and then nearly takes the gimp's head off before mom says, get him. Now, we only heard groaning from the gimp, but I can't help but think that he was actually saying, I was just hit in the head with a fire poker. Give me a second, for crying out loud. This is, and then of course, just to bring things full circle, mom says she's not going to cut off his ears. She's going to cut off his balls.
In hell.
So now this is the final beat of the story. Andy, how you feeling about us getting to what has to be the last act?
Oh man, I mean, and how many times has she said, I'm going to take somebody to hell and burn in hell? She's just throwing all those out there. Yeah. All the hells are coming in. Gimp suit is, you're kind of like, this is exactly what I was hoping for. Like Fool is coming back. He's the hero. He's fighting against Gimp at full strength, and mommy, they're trying psychological games on him. And, it's a lot of fun right now. And I actually didn't remember what was going to happen. So I was definitely all in and kind of ready for it.
Yeah. To your point, it felt like they had all the different things they had been building, whether it be the Gimp suit, the burns in hell, whatever. And it felt like they were just turning the volume up on all of it all at once. Fool eventually gets to Alice and tells her that she was kidnapped and that she's not actually one of their kids. She doesn't believe him at first, but Fool says, hey, my grandfather told me and he wouldn't lie. And so she says, that checks out, stranger who's brought nothing but pain into my life. Then James, I'll let you follow up after this. I thought it was interesting that this dude, while dressed like a gimp, says that Alice is a whore.
Yeah.
Of all things.
Yeah. Trying to convince mommy Alex is a whore.
Yeah.
You gotta let me do away with her.
you gotta respect just the confidence to be dressed like a gimp and being like, yeah, that chick, she's a whore.
Yeah.
like not just this total like that takes some self-confidence to put that forward and not and, like hope that it doesn't stick to you.
You're in a gimp suit.
Yeah. And I wear it for work, Andy.
Oh man.
And I didn't make the so this is where there's a weird process of them trying to escape by going to the roof and then going all the way down to the basement, which I totally didn't understand the exact plan, but they end up smashing Lord Humongous with a brick and then nose raping Mommy Dearest.
Yeah.
And,
did you see that? I was wondering what was going on with that.
But then in the basement, we get the another just banging line from Fool where he cocks the shotgun and says, "You know a prayer? Say it."
Yes.
Just so good. Yeah, James, your guy, Fool, he's just a one-liner machine. I never would have expected this going into this movie.
I mean, he's just killing it. I mean, through this whole time, he's outsmarting them. And I don't know how much. Well, okay, there's this line, and maybe you said that to Roach earlier, but he says you can go outside to the sun, the birds, the women, and I was like, I forget where that was, but that's just one of his earlier lines.
It's actually a little bit later, but it's fine. We can.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah, we're getting
It's
that had to be something he heard from Ving Rhames.
Yeah,
he's giving his props to Leroy there, but. Yeah. I think what this is leading to, as you say, Jack, is, and I don't know how much later it is, but what they initially came there for is the hidden treasure in the house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
this is where the because again, so much stuff happens in this movie. It's like bang, bang, bang. Before they get to the money part, though, Fool's mom shows up, or I guess her sister shows up.
His sister. The neighborhood.
Fool's sister shows up and like knocks on the door. And by the way, I think it's funny how
the grandpa, right?
opens up the little pane of window like the guy guarding the door at the Emerald City, and says, but the nurse says, "You're getting rich off of us paying rent." And this lady's like, "Yeah, of course I am. What are you expecting?" But then the mob rolls up and Alice comes through the ceiling with the original superhero pose and everyone's cheering. But I'm thinking at this point, the landlord's not doing anything illegal as far as the mob knows. They don't know about the kids. Like, this is just a person collecting rent. You're not allowed to just go march up on their house and attack them and drop through ceilings as far as the mob knows, right? Like, unless the mob knows that they're killers, do they know? Or are they just...
That's a great point, because I wrote in my notes, I'm like, why isn't the mob like storming the building? I'm like, they're outside, like, get in there. But yeah, you're right. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
But I always wondered that. It could have been easy, but I mean, this mob also knows, I guess, about the dangers that lurk in there. Because as you see, they never even get close. They're in the street and they're keeping a distance. As in, like, even though it's way more them.
We don't like what you're doing, but
I want to support the movement, but I don't want to be like in the movement.
Yeah, not to be in the movement. Can I like send some money to a website instead?
Is there a hashtag I could use?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm here. I'm going to stay a little bit back, but I'm here. I support.
Exactly.
Yeah. Downstairs, this is when Fool is talking to the Stair Boys and says, this is when he says the line about you get sons, bird, and women.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And I agree with you, James. I don't know if these guys are going to have quite the charm to meet a whole lot of women up top side. But this is when he sees all the money in the basement and says, "No wonder there's no money in the ghetto," which is still pretty timeless commentary.
Big
and
time.
It's
great line.
And James, we'll talk about it because of course we're having fun, we're laughing and stuff. But I actually thought this is that is a incredibly powerful commentary moment there.
It's a huge commentary moment, and it's I give props to Wes Craven for making this kind of movie because it's kind of very different from his other films. It's it's an allegory. It's a social political statement on classism and things of that nature, mostly classism, right? Because you have that these people are kind of owning these slums. So they've got all these, people of color in these slums living in squalor pretty much. Mm-hmm. And then they're also holding captive these kids in cages. So you can say what you want about it, but you can twist it for even something that goes on now, right? If you're looking at it through a political lens. And like I said, these people, they're Scrooge McDucking, like all this money, right, in this house, in the lower basement of the basement. So I just think it's very big. And as you say, it says it all in the one line. And hence why you have the mob outside. Because, as they say, it's kind of that age-old saying, if people live in squalor too much or they're living at such a deficit, they become desperate. Hence why you have the Ving Rhames and them come to rob these people. Not to say it's always good to rob people, but there's always a reason why people do it. And of course, they're not robbing good people. They're robbing bad people. They're hoarding all the money and also torturing children and abusing it. So...
it's a really cool, like I said, I thought it was a cool thing to throw in there. I love when you can get these kind of commentaries without it feeling heavy-handed, because it also didn't feel heavy-handed, like this is a statement movie. It was just something that was part of it. It fit within there. It made the statement, and it was really well done, I personally thought, with those things. But there was a moment,
and that's I'm sorry, I want to add
no, go ahead.
And that's the beauty of horror films. Is horror can do that. It can address all these kind of issues without being heavy-handed with it. And another perfect example is like Get Out, which might be way more heavy-handed, but it's entertaining and it gives all these kind of social political commentary
for sure
as well.
Yeah. And so, I thought that was great. I thought that at this point now, we see Fool finally talking to the Stair Boys, and he gets to talking to the Stair Master, not to be confused with Susan Summers' product, but they eventually decide to work together, and Stairmaster breaks through the stairs, which I don't know why you didn't do that originally.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I'm like, how can they're suddenly just everybody's free?
Yeah, and so they break through. They give Mama the Mother's Day present she deserves. Alice proves the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree either by stabbing Mom and letting the boys throw her down the stairs after they get a few nibbles in, it looks like.
But she stabbed her and it wasn't over. I mean, she was the true monster in the movie. She didn't die right away after being stabbed right in the solar plexus.
She takes it out, doesn't she?
Yeah, we watch her slowly pull it out. And it was actually perfectly done. This is the best part of a good horror movie, at least in my opinion, or a movie like this, where the big evil person that we've all just hated throughout the entire thing finally gets her comeuppance in a poetic justice kind of way, whether it be Alice stabbing her, then saying, I'm not your daughter, I already know. And then all the kids sort of just coming in and attacking her and finally getting the just desserts of what she's created. Really cool, really great way to kill off who was truly the big villain here. But as they say, Andy, just because you've been stabbed, eaten alive, and thrown downstairs by stair people, it doesn't mean you're dead. I had a quick commentary here, though. I thought it was interesting. And James, you said Scrooge McDuck so perfectly mentioned, because this house has the most detailed and intricate security system that just runs throughout the whole thing, works perfectly. But then all their money is just haphazardly thrown around with candles lit all around it. And you talk about just counted all the time. Well, maybe if you just stacked it properly, or maybe rubber banded some of the cash, I don't know, but it's thrown in there like it's garbage. What was this all about, Andy? You want to talk about this?
It's really good.
Yeah, I didn't think about that either, but the Scrooge McDuck is totally perfect. But yeah, the whole house in general is just I just didn't know houses had so much area within the walls to like maneuver around. It's just insane. They're coming at her at Mama through like the kitchen cabinets and through the floors, and I'm like, how was this house built? Like out of clay? Like it just seems like, how are people able to walk on these walls, and how are the cabinets working if you could just smash right through all this like paper mache? So that's what I was really thinking. And then with the money, it's just like, how easy is it to find that? You just got to break through some like paper walls, and you'll find a bunch of money just sitting there waiting for you.
Yeah, I imagine Chip and Joanne from Fixer Upper would go in there and be like, you have like 10,000 square feet of wall space. Like, you could triple the size of this living room by just moving the wall a little bit. I don't know.
Oh my God. You made another, and I want to say you made a great point, Jack, where you were talking about, and I didn't think about it, but yeah, the money's just kind of haphazardly just kind of splayed about.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. He says, no wonder there's no money in the ghetto. They're literally hoarding all this treasure, all this money as if it's nothing, as if it's like just old papers that you need to go through later, which would be gold to anyone else, but they're just hoarding the money. They're just hoarding it, which is another statement, really, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It is another good point. And that's why I say Scrooge McDuck was such a good example too, because Scrooge McDuck does it, and he goes swimming in his gold coins. But you're right. Yeah. Like they're not even using it. It's not invested. It's literally just they
didn't even do that. There was no swimming in the money scene,
But this is where we get another great line from Fool, who rigs up an explosive and says, "I don't want to kill you, but I will, because I don't like you much anyway."
Yes, I got it right here. Words to live by.
And then he blew up all the money. That part didn't sit well with me, James. Fool blows up. He's like, man, if the ghetto had this money, it'd be great. Better blow it up. Like, and by the way, this is when I realized, like, so the whole house like blows up. But like, was his mom or was his sister and grandpa in the house, or did his sister and grandpa go, "Oh well, bye"?
Yeah, where were they? Were they in the front? In the front yard?
Leave while all these kids broke through the stairs and murdered the mom, and then the house blew up? They're just hanging out. Like, what happened there?
Great question. I mean, this is where you have to suspend your disbelief. I mean, wasn't he in the house too when it blew up?
Yes.
Yeah, he was there too. And he kind of, I mean, I don't even know I don't even remember what happens after that. But I mean, we obviously see Daddy like blow through Kingdom Come. It looks like he blows through a few of the paper mache walls. He
and his
comeuppance.
And his line, I wrote his line down. "Kiss your ass goodbye, boy," is what he said.
He puts some stank on boy when he says it too.
Yeah. He sure did. A little payback.
Yeah, good on him though.
But yeah, I mean, of course, Fool blowing up the money, and in true film fashion, he's about to. I don't even know if he knows that the whole hood is outside the house, but it's about to start raining money. Yeah. I mean,
I think that's what the explosion did, though. Like, I think the explosion just threw the money everywhere. That was like that's what Fool wanted to do. He's like, I'm just gonna
C4 that was there.
I'm gonna blow up the money. It's not gonna burn up. It's just gonna fly in the air.
I'm not an explosive expert, but it did not look like they had nearly enough explosives for that kind of explosion. By the way, it was like one stick of dynamite and the whole house just. But
it's all they could afford in the budget.
Right?
So
dynamite budget. Well, we got this one stick.
They blew the budget.
Spent money on the 2 earrings.
They should have done a continuity thing. You should have shown someone turn the gas stove on, or the oven. Like that's when we know, right?
Well,
it's been on for.
So the movie ends. The ghetto's getting all their money back as it rains down. I guess rent isn't due anymore because the landlord is dead. But we see the Stair Boys roaming the streets after all that. No job, no social skills, no tongues, no eyes, no ears, no mental health possibilities. But hey, they're the city's problem now, fellas.
And as you mentioned that, like, I mean, I don't know if this is a mean thing to say, but why was the main stair boy? Why did he look like a zombie? Like I felt like if he was like a regular person, he'd probably look pretty messed up. But like he legit looks like a zombie. So I don't know how that happened. I don't know. I feel for him, so I don't want to talk too badly for him. But I was just kind of like, you look like a zombie, and I don't know if there's a surgery that like redoes that, but he's gonna have a tough life.
No one responds to him. I mean, he looks pretty scary.
He's gonna have a tough life.
That money. So
and he did he grab money at the end, or he just walked by?
He probably has no concept of what money is. He's been living under stairs for his whole life.
If you look like a zombie and you grab a bunch of money, you're probably going to be okay. But if you're a poor zombie, he's got a tough life coming up. I just feel bad for him.
Alice doesn't know what the word neighborhood means. Do you think that this guy's going to know how the economy works? So, by the way, Alice doesn't have an easy life ahead of her either, by the way.
She doesn't. No.
Because who's she staying with?
Maybe she goes and lives with the monster boy. Maybe her and the zombie, Stairboy zombie, and Alice. I mean, there's a sitcom right there.
Yeah. By the way, no one shed a tear for Roach getting burned to death either. Oh. I don't know if you guys knows that. She was like, he was just a friend.
His dying scene, we didn't even talk about it. When he gets shot, he dies so fast.
He does.
Like he like says, find Alice, and then he's just like, oh. I'm like, wow, that was fast.
I know.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to imagine these guys living under the stairs. They try to make a life for themselves. I'm just imagining, someone being like, so what makes you think you'd be a good fit here at Farmers Insurance? True.
Do you think the gimp suit made it through the explosion? That'd be great. Zombie boy just grabs that on the way out.
He's like, I gotta look formal attire. He says, I gotta look normal when I walk on the streets. I want to be able to blend in. Oh my goodness. This is 2 movies in a row where I don't think the reality is that things ended well for the people who got away at the end. I feel like this, because Alice is gonna need a bit of therapy. I think after this, just a smidge of therapy. And knowing how much college costs and how much therapy costs, I have a feeling that's how the gold is getting spent. And rent is not. Newsflash: rent doesn't get cheaper as time goes on.
No, it doesn't.
How did the old man know that too? He's like, you got rent till the year 2000. He already knew what all the rent prices were going to be in the future.
He already knew inflation and all that stuff.
Brilliant.
Or maybe it's a fixed rent.
Maybe he used the tarot cards. He's like, how much is this going to cost? Oh, the sword card. I guess that means 2000. Did they say where this was? Did they actually say the city?
Great question.
It's LA, right?
It's LA, but I didn't know that. I had to look that up because it did. I mean, it looks so slummy where they are, but you could see like the city behind the slums, right? At a certain point. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know. I mean, this could have been, I thought at one point it was like in Detroit or something of that nature. But the house, they were saying this is a famous house that they use. I guess it's in the West Adams district.
Well, I thought it was, because I caught somewhere in there that they talked about this ghetto being in Los Angeles. And then we had talked about in Lionheart, that was like some ghetto in Los Angeles as well. I didn't live here in 90 and 91, but was LA considered like, were people like, was that the slums of the United States back then? I don't know. It seems like, I mean, we saw 2 movies in a row that were like,
you're right. Yeah. Well, you think about it now. I mean, now a lot of stuff is filmed in other parts of the country, right? For obviously like tax reasons. But LA was always the place to film because you can like mimic any city or any kind of terrain. But, maybe you don't see it as much now. But I mean, there's some bad parts of the city.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so, these movies, they kind of do that to kind of help make a point about the poverty and things of that nature. So yeah, it is very interesting how bad, because, coming around LA now, I don't know what part of LA this would be.
Yeah.
Where they live. It looks like an East Coast town almost. The way the buildings are, especially like the, kind of the high rise project look. Maybe that's gone now, but it's very interesting how they recreate that.
All I know is looking at that house they were living in, sure, it was big, but I wouldn't feel like they were getting rich off of anybody living in that house. It did not look like a rich person's house. But that does it for this show. I want to wrap it up first. Andy, I'm going to kick it to you. Just kind of looking back, any final closing thoughts? And the question for you is, if Lionheart walked into this mansion, would he be able to survive?
Oh, 100%. I mean, he would do a lot of training in those walls. I feel like what a area that would have been for, like, remember we talked about on Lionheart where he fights a guy at a pool, he fights a guy at a racquetball court. Now he fights zombie boys in a creepy basement. I mean, sign me up. So I think he'd do quite well. He'd do a lot of training. He'd probably teach those guys, and if there was a gal, but how to protect themselves, how to fight against mommy and daddy. So there'd be a bunch of like little Lionhearts, that he'd be training. So I think, I think that's the movie we need next. But I really enjoyed it. James, great pick. It was great to go back and watch. And I definitely thought it was better than I remembered. I mean, I remember being pretty freaked out as a kid, but like seeing like there was actually like we talked about with like the social injustice, and we talked about Scrooge McDuck, but like seeing that makes the film, I think, even better. And then also, having a lead that was a boy of color, and he was like, I think at the time, my guess would be like 12 years old, have him like be the lead of the film. That's really unheard of kind of back then. So it was great to kind of, watch that. And James, I'm glad we got to enjoy a film that you saw when you were a kid. And I definitely, all in all, enjoyed it. And like there was just so much that went on with the Gimp guy and Ving Rhames, obviously, and the milk guy Roach. There's just so much, like Jack said, there was just like, I don't think there was acts. It was just like, all right, and go. And it just like was like madness. But I really enjoyed it.
And then, James, thank you for bringing it on. I'll say real quick, just on my end, and I'll let you get the final word on the film. I thought it was so much fun. Again, I always say I get squeamish during scary movies, but this was perfect for me. This is exactly the kind of scary movie that I like, where it's fun. You get your jumps and things like that, but it's also a fun thrill ride. It felt I almost could imagine this being just an amazing Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights kind of haunted house situation.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And like I said, the kid was so likable. I found myself rooting for him instead of thinking, what an idiot, what are you doing? Get out of the house. Like you see so many scary movies have, where you're yelling at them instead of thinking, man, this person's like a hero. I'm rooting for them. Good for them. So I think he played that really well. And I thought it was written very well. Again, the social commentary was very cool. Definitely appreciate you recommending this, but I'll let you get the final word on the movie and answer the question. If Ving Rhames and Joshua were hanging out together, who's going to have the best one-liners?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, Ving Rhames and Joshua, man, it's close. But, Joshua, man, he just keeps it coming. I mean, he's in such a deficit because he's older and he's got some crazy limp, but he doesn't give a damn. He'll give the business to anybody, right? So,
right.
He'd love to stick those two characters in a room together. I want to see that movie. I want to see that movie.
Just them hanging out, breaking into things and training fighters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but But yeah, I was gonna say I so love that you guys enjoyed this movie. And like I said, the funny thing is when we see stuff when we're kids and we haven't seen it in a while, we don't know how it's going to translate when we're older. It's movies are never as funny or as scary or as whatever as we remember them sometimes. But I think because of the social commentary, and you got Wes Craven, and he's mixing a little bit of horror, comedy, social commentary, as you say, it's a perfect blend. It made me think a lot too, because this movie, it's really a lot about, I mentioned representation. Mm-hmm. And, coming up, you don't think about that too much, but you do know, like for kids, it's important kids see images of who they are when they're either watching television, reading books, or listening to music. So they can, they have to see the images of who they are. This goes for anyone, whether it's a young kid of color or a young girl. You think of, you see it, and we're seeing that more now, which is great. Whether it's like strong young female leads in movies or people from the LGBTQ community, and the fact that this movie still remains is I did some research, and Jordan Peele is actually going to produce a remake of this movie.
No way.
I saw something that said that. Yeah, that
so
fits
cool.
perfectly.
Yeah, and I think it's so perfect. And I probably wouldn't have known this if we hadn't gone back and watched this, because I didn't read it in the trades, and this came out last year during the pandemic and everything. But I think this is a perfect movie for him to do, and I'm very interested to see what he will do with it, because he may even take it to a whole other level. Possibly,
we need to go see that together when it comes out. All three of us.
I'm down. That'd be amazing.
Well, I think this was a great movie. Yeah. I think this is fun to watch. But next week, here's the big surprise. We're moving to 1992. And Andy, you shared one of your favorite movies. James, you shared one of your favorite movies. I'm going to share a movie I've seen one time in my life and hardly remember. It is the 1992 classic starring Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston. We're watching The Bodyguard.
Oh, boy.
Man.
Because the one thing I remember from this movie is Kevin Costner's name is Frank Farmer, and I've never heard my last name in any movie ever. So I want to give this one a rewatch. I have no idea how this is going to play out. I have no idea how good it is, but I remember this. I Will Always Love You really blew up from this movie, and I can't wait to watch it again.
Oh, wow.
I remember the music video. I don't remember anything about the movie. I don't know if I've seen the movie.
I don't really remember it either.
I know I've seen her music video. I think there's like some ice at some point and some snow. I don't know. This is going to be good. This is great.
This is a good movie. I remember seeing it as a kid. I remember my mom loved this movie, every black household, this was a big film, because this was Whitney Houston. I think it was like her first acting role. So, and Kevin Costner, he may have been already coming off of, I think Dances with Wolves had already came out.
Dances with Wolves and Robin Hood.
And Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
And Field of Dreams.
Oh, and Field of Dreams.
Did that come out before or after this, though?
Field of Dreams, I think, was like 89.
Yeah, that came out before.
So, he was on a roll.
He was killing it,
He was. But Kevin Costner
prime.
is a great actor. In anything he's in, even if the movie's not good, he's great. So this is a good pick, man. I haven't seen this movie since it came out, to be honest.
I probably have, but it's 92, I probably would have seen it in 93 or something, on VHS or whatever, but
wow.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm kind of worried because I don't know how it's going to go. Again, I don't really remember. I saw it once in 93 and I just remembered his name's Farmer. So I wanted to pick it. But that does it for us this time. Before we go, James, where can the world find you online and see any projects you're working on?
Yeah, well, you can find me on Instagram at JEShippy2, the number 2, and on Twitter at JShippy2. And and that's what's up.
All right. And Andy Rossi, where can we find you at?
You could find me at Just Andy Rossi.
All right. And it's at Just Andy Rossi, by the way. You're not just saying Just Andy Rossi.
Yeah. At JUSTANDYROSSI.
And you can find me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. That does it for this week's episode of Evolution of Movies 1991. Next week, it's 1992, starring or featuring The Bodyguard. If you haven't seen it yet, give it a watch, because next week we're going to talk all about it. And I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments as always. Thank you guys. See you next time.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, James.
Thanks.